My electric bill didn't just creep up, it exploded. One month it was $45. The next it slammed into $847, and every stolen watt of that power was feeding my HOA neighbor's Tesla. Clarissa had secretly siphoned electricity from the solar system I built in memory of my late wife, at the exact moment I was struggling to afford my daughter's college textbooks. Every kilowatt she stole was paying for her luxury lifestyle, powered by my wife's clean energy legacy. At 2 in the morning, the sharp smell of overheated wiring mixed with her expensive perfume drifting from the charging port told me this wasn't an accident. This was deliberate theft. What Clarissa didn't know was that I spent 2 decades designing electrical systems for spacecraft at NASA. And when an engineer documents a crime at full voltage, it doesn't end with quietly unplugging a cable. It ends with police video. What would you do if your neighbor stole your power to fuel her Tesla? Let me lay it all out. My name is Russell Hammond. I'm 58 years old, a former NASA engineer who spent 30 years designing spacecraft electrical systems before moving into freelance consulting. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Sarah to asthma caused by pollution. The irony was impossible to miss, especially since she dedicated her life to environmental protection and clean energy. Sarah dreamed of going fully solar. She talked about it for years, cutting our carbon footprint, becoming energy independent, proving that one household could make a difference. After her funeral, I poured my grief into building a 15-kilowatt rooftop solar system in her honor. Every panel was placed with aerospace-level precision, angled for peak efficiency. The system produced enough surplus power to slash our electric bill from $200 a month down to $45. Now I'm raising our daughter Emily on my own. She's 22, brilliant, and studying engineering at UT Austin with just 2 semesters left. My consulting income covers the basics, mortgage, groceries, but her $18,000 annual tuition stretches us thin. Those solar savings weren't a bonus. They were survival. They paid for textbooks, lab fees, and weekend trips home where she'd help me think through problems while our cat, Mr. Newton, supervised from the windowsill. Emily teases me about what she calls my NASA syndrome. I measure everything twice, label household items with unnecessary precision, and turn daily life into systems. Coffee mug number 3 is marked for optimal heat retention. Tools in the garage are organized by usage frequency. I keep spreadsheets for every household expense. Emily says I'm thorough. Sarah used to say obsessive, but always with a smile because she knew that mindset kept our family stable. Then came Clarissa Thornfield, 51 years old, newly appointed chair of the HOA's Homeowner Standards Committee. She had the energy of someone who'd finally found a position that gave her power. Imagine every HOA nightmare you've ever heard, then add a spotless white Tesla Model S worth more than most people earn in a year, and the insecurity of someone who married into money and never quite feels like she belongs. Clarissa had recently divorced her first husband after a messy split. She compensated by controlling everyone else's lives with missionary zeal. She prowled the neighborhood with a clipboard and tape measure, acting like she was doing us all a favor. Her Tesla's cooling system hummed day and night in the driveway, blending with the chemical scent of her spray tan during brutal Texas summers. You could hear the crunch of her pristine white gravel under designer heels as she conducted compliance checks, always angling herself so the sun hit her oversized diamond ring just right. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday evening, I was grilling dinner for Emily's visit home when Clarissa knocked on my door. She held a bright orange extension cord and an official-looking clipboard. Community Green Initiative Pilot Program, she announced, confidently flashing paperwork that looked legitimate at a glance. She claimed my solar system produced more power than I needed, and that the HOA was testing shared energy protocols for the good of the neighborhood. Before I could even process what she was saying, let alone ask for authorization, she plugged the extension cord into my outdoor outlet and began dragging nearly 100 feet of cable across both driveways toward her Tesla. The whole thing took less than 3 minutes. It was rehearsed, planned. My next electric bill jumped from $45 to $156. The month after that, $298. Then came $847, more than my mortgage. Clarissa quickly abandoned the extension cord setup. Within 2 weeks, she'd installed a permanent Tesla charging station, professionally mounted and wired directly into my outdoor electrical box. When I confronted her, she produced a laminated participation agreement, polished enough to fool anyone who didn't know better. That $800+ bill hit me like a punch to the chest. The same day, Emily called from campus in tears because she couldn't afford her organic chemistry textbook. I had to raid my emergency fund, the money I'd been saving for her graduation gift. Even Mr. Newton paid the price. His premium cat food got replaced with a bargain brand. He noticed immediately and judged me every time I filled his bowl. I'm an engineer. I don't ignore unexplained problems, I analyze them. I installed professional-grade power monitoring equipment on my solar system, the kind used for critical infrastructure. The results were staggering. Clarissa's Tesla was consuming 75 kilowatt-hours every single night, the equivalent of powering 4 homes at once. Her charging schedule was perfectly synced with times when my solar credits should have been feeding back to the grid. Instead, I was buying expensive grid power to support her car. With 6 months of data, I confronted her. Charts, photos, utility bills, timestamps down to the minute. My spreadsheet showed exactly $2,400 stolen in 3 months. I told her it stopped immediately and I expected repayment. She waved it off, calling it community sharing. When I asked for proof of an HOA vote, she said paperwork was still in process and accused me of being unneighborly. Her spray tan smell intensified as she grew defensive. Her Tesla's cooling fan hummed smugly in the background while I poured cheap kibble into Mr. Newton's bowl. So I did what I always do. I verified. I obtained official HOA meeting minutes going back 3 years. No pilot program had ever existed. Clarissa had forged approval documents using copied signatures and stolen letterhead. Technically speaking, her Tesla required a constant 7.7 kilowatts at 240 volts. That's like running 7,700-watt bulbs for 8 hours straight. My solar system produced 15 kilowatts but only during daylight. Her charging happened at night, wiping out my savings. She refused to disconnect and threatened HOA violations if I interfered. That's when I knew this wasn't confusion, it was fraud. Emily called again that night. She had to choose between buying a lab manual or eating dinner. I looked at Clarissa's Tesla glowing under my stolen solar lights and promised things would change. Neighbors quietly started asking questions about their own rising bills. Mrs. Issa next door received a violation notice the same day she questioned Clarissa. The pattern was obvious. When I locked access to my outlet, Clarissa retaliated with daily fines and legal threats. A certified letter warned of liens and forced compliance. Emily's tuition deadline loomed. Then Clarissa escalated further, having an electrician install a bypass directly into my main panel without permits or permission. I installed cameras, documented everything, and researched Texas law. Theft, trespass, fraud, all confirmed. A lawyer agreed, but his retainer was $5,000 I didn't have. When I confronted the electrician, Clarissa arrived on cue, insisting HOA authority overruled city permits. My cameras captured her instructing him on hiding connections from inspectors. She documented her own crimes. Tesla chargers require 60-amp circuits. Her setup was a fire hazard. She was risking my family's safety to power a car she couldn't legally operate. Board members began calling, claiming she'd shown them evidence of my aggressive non-cooperation. Emily then called with devastating news: her tuition payment bounced. She had 48 hours before losing enrollment. Public records revealed Clarissa owed over $40,000 in back taxes and faced foreclosure. Her theft wasn't entitlement, it was desperation. Texas law was clear. I had full control over my electrical system. Even Mr. Newton avoided her side of the property. At 2 in the morning, she spray-painted my cameras and filed an HOA complaint accusing me of harassment. The board ordered camera removal. Emily had to withdraw from her class, delaying graduation. But Clarissa pushed too far, challenging my solar panels with forged inspection documents. With help from a friend, I installed hidden cameras on private property beyond HOA reach. Those cameras revealed everything. Her Tesla charged nightly because her own electrical service had been red-tagged for violations. My attorney friend reviewed the evidence and confirmed multiple criminal cases. His advice changed everything. I could legally modify my system to protect it. So I asked Clarissa one simple question. Can you explain why your home's electrical panel has been red-tagged by the utility company for safety violations? She snapped back that it was none of my business. She snapped those words at me like a shield, but her eyes betrayed her. There was a flicker there. Fear. The kind that shows up when someone realizes the numbers aren't on their side anymore, because engineers don't ask questions like that unless they already know the answer. I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice. I simply nodded and walked back into my house, the smell of burnt wiring still lingering in the air. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with Mr. Newton curled beside me, spreadsheets open, camera footage queued, legal statutes highlighted line by line. Clarissa thought this was about power. She didn't realize it was about evidence. At exactly 2:14 a.m., my hidden cameras caught her sneaking across the property line again. Same designer heels, same oversized sunglasses, even though it was pitch black. She opened the charging panel like she owned it. What she didn't know was that earlier that evening I had legally reconfigured my system, not to sabotage, not to endanger, simply to isolate and log. Every amp, every volt, every second. When her Tesla began drawing power, alarms didn't blare, lights didn't flicker. Instead, my system calmly recorded everything and automatically sent encrypted backups to 3 locations. One local, one cloud-based, one external drive I'd mailed to my brother weeks earlier just in case. At 2:26 a.m., something else happened. Her charging station overheated and shut itself down, not because I interfered, but because it was never installed correctly to begin with. She panicked. I could see it. She yanked the cable, slapped the side of the unit, cursed loudly enough for my microphone to catch every word. The next morning, I received another HOA notice. This one accused me of intentionally disrupting approved community infrastructure and demanded immediate fines totaling $3,800. The timing wasn't subtle. Clarissa was flailing. Emily called me during her lunch break, her voice exhausted. She was working extra hours at the campus lab just to afford meals. I could hear the disappointment she was trying to hide. That was the moment something hardened inside me. This was no longer about money, it was about protecting my family. So I did what engineers do when systems fail. I escalated to oversight. I contacted the city electrical inspector directly, not anonymously, not emotionally, professionally. I provided timestamps, load charts, thermal readings, and video evidence of unpermitted work. The inspector went quiet for a long moment, then said words I'll never forget. "Sir, this is one of the most documented cases of residential utility theft I've ever seen." 2 days later, city trucks rolled into the neighborhood. Clarissa stood in her driveway, arms crossed, smile frozen, as inspectors red-tagged her charging station, her panel, and issued a cease and desist order. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Phones came out, whispers spread. That afternoon, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Clarissa arrived confident, armed with binders and laminated lies. I arrived with a single tablet. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I simply connected the screen to the projector. Graphs filled the room: nightly theft, forged documents, audio of her instructing contractors to hide violations, video of vandalism. Her voice echoed through the room, bragging about making it look official. One board member stood up and walked out. Another asked if the footage was real. I told them it was already backed up with the city and the utility provider. Clarissa tried to interrupt, her voice cracked. She accused me of harassment, of intimidation, of weaponizing technology, but the room had shifted, authority drained from her posture in real time. By the end of the meeting, the board voted unanimously to suspend her from all HOA positions pending investigation. That night, police knocked on her door. Utility theft, fraud, trespassing, vandalism. Emily called me crying again, but this time they were tears of relief. The university reinstated her enrollment after an emergency hardship review. Her tuition payment was deferred. She told me she was proud of me. My electric bill the next month, $48. Mr. Newton got his premium food back. He forgave me instantly. Clarissa's Tesla was towed 2 weeks later. And Sarah's solar panels, they're still up there, quietly doing what she always believed in, powering our future without being stolen. So let me ask you something. If someone stole from your family under the cover of authority, would you stay quiet?